Welcome to another episode of PhenomenaTelevision.com, our third episode, and the other ones were very exciting, and this one will follow suit. Getting into it. Actually, I haven't been able to get to some news because we've been so jam-packed with other stuff, but I do have a couple news issues here I want to talk about. First, the Denver UFO Ballot Initiative. You may have heard of this. It's gotten in the media quite a bit around Denver. And there's a gentleman, Jeff Peckman, who, after watching one of the speakers at Rick Nelson's Paranormal Research Forum, and Rick Nelson is a co-host of this show, and he'll be coming up in a minute, we had John Schuessler, who is actually the ex-director of the Mutual UFO Network and still a board member. And in fact, he did work at NASA as an engineer, and he worked as a director on some very high-level projects. Anyways, while he was working there, that's when he found out about UFOs. On a Gemini mission, he heard some of the Gemini astronauts calling down and talking about UFOs, and that's got him propelled into this field, and he's been involved for quite some time. Anyway, he's a wonderful speaker, just an excellent speaker. If you keep an eye on Colorado MUFON and the Paranormal Research Forum, I'm sure he's going to come around and talk again. But Jeff Peckman went to this talk. He got excited about it. He thought, hey, you know what? We're the government. The people are the government. So I'm going to see what I can do about getting the government involved in the extraterrestrial visitation issue. So, as you may have seen, he has been able to work on an initiative where he is going to get on the ballot in November, or at least try to have Denver create a commission on looking into extraterrestrial subjects and how they may affect Denver, Colorado, and make sure there's a committee that will be aware of the issues and take any necessary measures to protect or to involve Denver in the extraterrestrial visitation situation. So it's a great initiative. We'll hopefully have an interview on the show. We should have an interview on the show in the next few months. Rick Nelson has been working on this. I have also been helping as an advisor with Jeff, and he's a great guy. And we should also have him and or Rick available for an upcoming event that I want to talk about, and that's the Colorado UFO Briefing. I do this on a yearly basis. The first year I did this in the Civic Center downtown, which was kind of exciting. It was extremely hot and there's not much shade. The shade was packed with people, but if you couldn't get some shade, then it was a little uncomfortable to be down there. Luckily, we had a great amount of shade, and we had some wonderful speakers out there for the first one 2 years ago. Last year we had some more great speakers, and we did this at the Tivoli Center on the Auraria campus, the student center for the University of Colorado of Denver, Metro State College, and for the Colorado Community College of Denver down there. And this year we're doing that again, hosted by the Crypto Science Society, a Metro State College student organization that looks into the paranormal. And they're going to host this again this year, July 12th, and it's an all-day event. It's only $5. Come down and listen to some excellent speakers on the subject of UFOs. This year we're going to have international journalist Paula Harris. She couldn't make it last year. She was here the year before, but she got sick, unfortunately, last year. She always has some amazing experiences, amazing footage, and some great things to talk about. She's on the cutting edge. In fact, she was just on Coast to Coast a little while ago. Chuck Zukowski will also be there. He actually will be speaking with me in Roswell, New Mexico this year. We're being commissioned by the city to come down there for their annual Roswell event on the July 4th weekend to speak. Chuck Zukowski is a Roswell researcher as well as a longtime UFO researcher, has a lot of great things to say. And Stan Romanek will be there. And if you haven't been aware of the Stan Romanek situation, he's got amazing video. He's an abductee. I've been working on this case for a while, actually outside of MUFON, but Stan has some amazing experiences, and everybody that comes to his talks are just absolutely amazed. I'm going to be speaking, and I'm going to be covering government involvement with UFOs, and then Stan's going to be showing some video and evidence of government involvement in his case. It does seem as though the government has been observing what's been going on with Stan. If not the government, some sort of human organization with quite a bit of resources. So very interesting talk. He always packs the house, and he always leaves everyone just absolutely amazed. And we're going to do a Skywatch that night because I myself have been around Stan and seen UFOs. So have many others. Like many abductees, I've personally found, or at least if you don't believe in that situation, people who claim to be abductees do seem to have UFOs following them around. And Stan is also one of those people. So several of these people actually that I've met, I've actually been able to see UFOs. And I became a researcher prior to having seen a UFO. So obviously that's been exciting and quite amazing to me. Colorado UFO Briefing, you can go to UFO Think Tank to get more information about that, or you can go to coloradoUFObriefing.com. So it's definitely something for you Denver residents to come catch. And if you're out of town, feel free to fly in and come check us out as well. Another thing I want to talk about is a great DVD that's come out recently. I got this copy from the host and the writer himself, Michael Horn. He is a Billy Meier researcher, and this DVD is called The Silent Revolution of Truth. I'll kind of hold this up and you can see this famous UFO photograph on the picture of the DVD. Billy Meier probably has the most famous UFO photographs ever in the world. He took a lot of these back in the 70s with 8mm video or with 35mm cameras. He's a one-armed individual. Unfortunately, he lost his arm. And regardless of what you think about that case, this video is great because it goes over his extremely interesting background. He's had some amazing experiences outside of his UFO experiences, which of course are very unique. So this goes through his entire history. So if you are interested in Billy Meier, or if you're just interested in the UFO subject at all, this is a wonderful video. It's got some beautiful cinematography in it, and it's definitely worth having. The Silent Revolution of Truth. You can find out more about that at revolutionmovie.com or theyfly.com. So I just wanted to plug that because it's a great piece of work. Possibly for Billy Meier buffs, you'd probably feel it's historic. Speaking of historic, some of the speakers we have coming up on this episode are excellent. We've got Travis Walton. Travis Walton I'll explain more about in a second, and I talked about him last time. We've got Dolores Cannon. She is a hypnotherapy therapist, and she has been doing regressions and abduction regressions for decades. She's going to be talking about her experiences and her insights on the subject of abductions. We have Rosemary Ellen Guiley. I showed you a little bit about Fate Magazine last time because we had the editor of Fate Magazine on. But Rosemary is a writer for Fate Magazine. She's an author, written several books on ghosts and other phenomenon. She's also, all of these people are often on Coast to Coast. But she is doing some research into shadow people, which is very interesting because I don't know anybody else doing research into shadow people. So she's going to be talking about that. And then finally we have Ed Martin. And Ed Martin has been looking into Jesus in India. He has written a book on this, and then he has also worked on a documentary that should be airing soon. So Ed Martin's a very interesting fella, and he'll be talking about why he believes that Jesus had spent some time in India. You may have heard that. Some people feel that way. And then finally we've got Rick Nelson. He will be speaking with Travis Walton, and I'm going to talk about that in 2 seconds. I just want to say a special thanks real quick to the Denver Open Media. That's Denver Public Access Television, which we can be seen on at 7 p.m. every Monday, Channel 56 Comcast, if you're fortunate enough to be in the Denver area and getting that channel. And then also, it's a great organization, the Denver Open Media. They've been extremely helpful, and we thank them for the opportunity to be on their channel. And then also, the UFO Congress. Lots of these interviews, not all of them, but many of them, I got at the UFO Congress in 2008 in Laughlin, Nevada. It's it's probably the best conference to go to. The MUFON Symposium is also a great one, but the UFO Congress is the longest. It's kind of like a trade kind of organization meeting because there's so many researchers there that you get to meet and talk with that it's wonderful. But I want to throw in a plug for them. You can go to ufocongress.com to get some of their past speakers and their full 1 to 2 hour presentations, including Michael Horn, Dolores Cannon, many of these people that I'll be bringing up. So I wanted to talk about the UFO Congress, but finally let's get into Travis Walton. Unfortunately, we had some audio difficulties with the beginning of this interview. It was a short interview anyway, but Travis Walton, you may have seen the movie Fire in the Sky, about a young man who gets abducted, and that story was about Travis Walton. Travis Walton was out in the forest with some co-workers. He's a lumberjack, and after a long hard day's work, they were coming home through the forest when they saw a strange craft above a clearing. Travis Walton, trying to be funny, a young fellow back then, and show off to his buddies, ran out under this craft. This craft started to scare him. However, when he got up to come back, he was blown feet away. This craft, seems to have emitted some sort of energy, purposely or not, that made him kind of fly a few feet back. His buddies got so scared they took off in the truck. They came back a little later because they wanted to find out what happened to him, because of course they did love their buddy. But unfortunately, Travis was gone. There was a huge manhunt after this. The police thought maybe his buddies killed him and left his body in the forest, and nobody believed these guys when they said that they had seen a UFO and what had happened. Travis Walton then woke up a couple days later, and on the side of the street he did have his clothes on, unlike the movie where his clothes were off. And so you could watch this movie Fire in the Sky to find out more about it. However, what happened on the craft was completely false from the movie. That was all made up and dramatized for Hollywood. What did happen on the craft is that he woke up on a table. He was really groggy and he thought he was in a hospital until he found he was surrounded by these 3 very strange creatures with big heads and big eyes. He freaked out, essentially, as he puts it, jumped off the table and started swinging at these guys. They got afraid, so they ran away. And when they ran away, Travis decided to look out in the hallway and creep out of the room he was in. And essentially what Rick and him will be talking about is what happened when he left that room, allegedly or seemingly aboard some sort of craft. But thanks for joining us again. Be sure to check out phenomenatelevision.com for more information and links on all of this and some local and other things going on. And I hope you enjoy this episode.
I knew I was in that craft, and it just freaked me out.
What did it look like? You went out the door. What did it look like there when you left the door?
Well, it was just there was a passageway. It was lit from above. Just the whole upper surface of the passageway was glowing faintly. It was dim. It was dimly lit everywhere. Even in there where the light fixture was over me on that table, it really wasn't all that bright. It was
kind of a glow.
Yeah, and kind of a non-directional, very soft, low kind of a light. If we were going to try to read by that light, it really, wouldn't be enough light.
Okay.
So it was dimly lit in there.
Speaking of reading, that brings to mind, what about eyes? You hear so much frequently about.
Well, when they came around and came towards me and I started striking out at them with this thing, they all stopped and they just stared at me there for an instant before they turned and left. And it was right then, that moment, in which they were all 3 just looking at me in a way that it was actually the focal point of the fears that I had in the whole aftermath of the experience was those eyes looking into me.
Was it the stereotypical thing we see on television with the large black almond shape? Or?
Well, no, and these eyes blinked. I actually saw them blink.
Okay.
It was not some kind of a fixed insect-looking eye kind of a thing at all. But there was a look there, not from expression, but I don't know how you know how if at the zoo you look at an ape and they look at you and there's something different about what you see in the eyes of an ape compared to other animals, you know?
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like that, you know? There's a...
Was it a pupil and iris type thing?
Yes. Yeah,
oh, really?
It was.
Oh, the size of a human's? Or?
Oh, much bigger. Very large eyes, you know?
Okay. Were their heads larger? Or
yeah, their heads were pretty big for their bodies.
Okay.
Yeah.
And was
and
it
hairless.
Triangular shape?
Well, they had small jaws. The lower part of their face was small, and then the upper part that would correspond to our cranium was pretty large.
Okay. Oh. Again, after you had gone out into the hallway, what was your experience? You, I believe, went in the opposite direction. You said they went to the right, and you went to the left.
Yeah.
What was your experience moving from there?
Well, you know, I was just trying to get away from them and out of there any way I could. Just kind of a mindless, you know, flight, like you say. But the passageway was curved, and curved so tightly that I couldn't see very far ahead and couldn't see behind me to see if they were chasing me. So I was just kind of in this torn situation of, you know, running from something, I don't know if it's there, and running toward I don't know what, because I can't see that far ahead.
What about your experience about any other part of the ship that you got to? What did that look like?
Well, the entire surface of the inside of that ship was a metallic, was sort of a matte, non-reflective look, and pretty featureless. There weren't buttons and lights and dials and stuff all over the place like you'd see in a science fiction movie. It was a very featureless environment, very clean. But the one hope that I had of finding a way out was this one room I came to that had some controls on a chair that I thought might, you know, open a door. This would be a way out.
Was it one of those stylized looking chairs?
It was curved, sort of sculpted. Everything in that place was very rounded and sculpted. You know, the doorways and where the walls met the floor and all that. Everything was rounded and smooth. But
what did you do? Did you sit in the chair then, or?
Yeah, it was really quite small for me, but I did move the lever, and it caused the star pattern to move. You could see the stars. Oh, well, they could have just been points of light. It wasn't like a window. It was like you could, like the stars were either projected on, or somehow you could see through the surfaces of the floor and walls and ceiling.
Like a hologram almost.
Yeah, some kind of a projection or a viewing method.
Did that seem to respond at all to your moving the?
Yeah, the lever caused that to move, but these other buttons, I was mainly hoping to open a door, and most of them didn't do anything. Some of them caused this little screen to change a little bit, but it was moving that lever that really, you know, kind of it was disorienting to have all those star pattern move all simultaneously like that. So I resolved I wasn't going to mess with that anymore, and it was about that time that I somehow sensed that there was somebody watching me, and I turned to see what I took to be a human being standing in the door there.
Looked like a person, human?
Yeah, a human, you know, dressed in a blue suit, uniform of some kind.
Male, female?
It was a man,
okay.
And he had a helmet on his head. But I assumed that, you know, this was somebody there to take me out of here, rescue me. So I went up to him and started, you know, trying to ask him where I was, and I was telling him, there are these creatures in here, you got to get me out of here. And he just he didn't answer. He just took me by the arm and led me out of there.
And somehow you ended up on a larger area from this craft, is that right?
That's right. He took me outside of this craft. Now, I don't know if it was inside of there the whole time, or if it was taken into there during the time I was running around trying to find a way out.
Mm-hmm.
But I know that when we left the craft, it was at that time parked inside of this large room. I don't know whether that was a part of a larger craft or some building somewhere. But I was taken out of there into another room.
A larger facility?
Well, it was a smaller room. Out of the big room down a hallway to a smaller room, and he put me in a chair there, and there was some other people in there. He left. They weren't wearing helmets, so I started trying to ask them where I was and what was happening to me. But instead of answering, they just started leading me over to this table and trying to get me to sit on it.
We've got a very limited amount of time, unfortunately, but I'd like to touch on a couple of highlights as we wrap up. You found yourself on a night road?
Yeah. They put a mask over my face, and I blacked out, and I woke up on the highway outside of the town nearest where this happened.
Disoriented?
Yeah, I came through pretty quickly, and I saw the craft leave, and once I looked around, I knew where I was. And I had a little pain left, but I was still pretty lucid and saw where I was and ran down into the town.
What was the time frame from the time you were taken to the time you returned?
Well, this was 5 days later, but at the time I thought it was the same night. I'd been unconscious and I had no memory of anything but this brief period of conscious time, so I thought it was the same night. It was quite a shock to find out it wasn't.
What a bizarre experience. You've written a book. What is the name of that?
Fire in the Sky, The Walton Experience.
And the movie is Fire in the Sky.
Yes.
A tremendous movie, by the way. And you have a new book you're writing, is that right?
Yeah, it's basically just an updated, a new edition of Fire in the Sky, The Walton Experience.
And you have a website that you could share?
Yeah, it's walton@cybertrails.com.
Great. Sorry to wrap this up so quickly, but we just had a brief moment, and hopefully this will be an introduction to some people so they can take a look at your website, hopefully get your new book, and certainly relook at the movie if they haven't seen it so far. But one of the most fascinating UFO contact experiences ever documented, and enough sufficient information with a skeptical police department and townspeople that with the evidence, there was no question an event took place. And good luck to you as you work beyond these things. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Travis.
Okay, I'm Dolores Cannon, and I'm a hypnotherapist. I have been doing hypnosis for 40 years, and I've been doing past life therapy and past life regression for 30 years. And I've been involved in the UFO phenomena for 20. So I've been doing a lot of research, and I've done thousands and thousands of cases and thousands of clients. So this has resulted in my writing 15 books about the work that I have discovered and all the information I've come across. Not only past lives, but also the UFO phenomena. And I've come up with theories that no one else has found, because mine is always positive anyway, have nothing to do with the negativity. But I have found the answers to why they're coming and why they are here and why they are doing all of the things to the people. And it's not negative the way some people think. Once you understand the phenomena and understand why they are doing what they're doing, it makes sense and it becomes very clear. Because a lot of the clients I have say once they find out the real reason behind it, they say, I can live with that. It makes sense and it's not negative. So I'm here for this Congress because I'm a speaker, but I have been coming to this Congress, I think 11 years now I've been speaking here. And every time I get a new book, they ask me to come back and talk about that. So I've gone from the UFO phenomena, it began to expand into metaphysics that was very complicated metaphysics. So that's why after the book, I've written 4 books on UFOs. But the main one that chronicles my 20 years of research is called The Custodians. But that began to go away from UFOs into more metaphysical information. And when that happened, I began the series called The Convoluted Universe. It's now in the 3rd volume, has just come off the press, of The Convoluted Universe. And I say those are books for people who want their minds bent like pretzels, because they go off into a totally different way of looking at things, new theories that defy the imagination. And by the 3rd volume, I mean, the brain is really twisted around. But people say, even if they don't understand these theories and ideas, it makes them think. And we're beginning to understand a little bit more about where the ETs and the UFO phenomena is coming from. It's not simple anymore. It's very complicated. Those that try to keep it as a simple, ETs on UFOs, it's gone way beyond that. There's other dimensions. There's a whole other metaphysical part that they don't understand. John Mack once said, the only way to understand the UFO phenomena is to understand metaphysics. There's no way of separating the two. They go together and intermingle. So you're not going to be able to keep them apart. You've got to understand metaphysics, and it goes very close to quantum physics. A lot more involved here than the average person knows. Well, I was involved in normal hypnosis in the 1960s, which was 40 years ago. And then it was just all the very simple things, stop smoking, lose weight. And in those days, I stumbled into reincarnation by accident, if anything is ever an accident. And when I got over into that, that opened up a whole new way of thinking, a whole new avenue that I hadn't been exposed to before, that the possibility of past lives. I heard about it, but in those days, the only book out was The Search for Bridey Murphy. There weren't any books out to tell the investigator or hypnotist how to do these things. So I more or less have written my own rules since the beginning, but there was nobody to tell you what to do. So from the 60s, when I got into the simple part, I put it on the back burner for 10 years because I had a husband in a wheelchair for 25 years. He was almost killed in the Navy, and I had a family to raise. So I put it on the back burner until the 1970s. 30 years ago, I began to pick it up again. And that's when I decided I wanted to explore the past life phenomena, because the time travel was absolutely fascinating. And then over the 30 years, I've developed my own technique that I'm teaching all over the world. This technique allows you to tap into the higher conscious, the oversoul, the higher mind that has all of the answers. When you tap into that, you can have instantaneous healings. You can have the answer to any question you want and any information you want. So when that opened up, that's where all the information began to pour out that I'm using in the books now. But the Bridey Murphy case, it was about her going back and reliving, and she had dates and names and places they could research in Ireland. But they met with a lot of ridicule, and they tried to discredit the man who did it, Maury Bernstein. And they went to great lengths to discredit him because he was opening up a whole new way of thinking that had never been allowed before. So they tried to push it under the rug. But it was a book for its time, and it made people begin to think. But like I said, today it'd be too simple. All right, that was through Lou Farish, if you know him. Lou Farish had the UFO news clipping service, and he was an investigator. He still is an investigator for many years, and he was working with MUFON, and then he went off on his own. And this was in the 80s, is when he asked me if I would come in as a hypnotist on some of the cases, because the MUFON people in Arkansas said they had people who thought they had had abduction experiences, but they didn't have anyone who could do the sessions with them. They tried a psychologist, and the psychologist would get the person under and begin to talking to them. They would have them on board the craft going into the experience, and the psychologist would wake them up. They'd say, I don't know what to do. I don't know what questions to ask. That's the worst possible thing you could ever do. That's not therapy. You start into something and then pull the person out of it. So when that happened, they said, would I come in and work with some of these people that they had? They said, we don't think it's going to bother you because you've been involved in the bazaar for so long. And it didn't, because I have a curiosity and this kind of thing doesn't scare me. So I began working on the cases with Lou Farish, mostly. MUFON was investigating some of them with me, but mostly it was me and Lou Farish. And he's always been my confidant all these times. I could bounce cases off of him, and you need somebody you can discuss things with. So it's been now 25 years, I guess, we have been working together and discussing cases. And we put on the UFO conference in Eureka Springs, and it's now in its 20th year. So that's how long I've been working with Lou. And we've just we always kept the people anonymous and protected their privacy, but it helped to have someone that you can discuss these cases with. So it's mostly been Lou, and he's the one I've been working with all this time. But I speak with UFO conferences and groups all over the world. Well, Bud Hopkins has been around for, that long. And Whitley Strieber came along later, after about the same time, but Bud Hopkins was doing it first. There was very few in those days that were doing it. In my early days, I wrote, my first books were dealing with past life regressions where the person was reliving history. And I hadn't got into these other things until, I guess I've been doing it 10 years before I got into the UFO phenomena. But in Arkansas, there wasn't anybody. And very few people were doing it yet. Because, even the conference here, the one here in Laughlin, is only 17 years old. And remember, the first UFO conference we had in Arkansas, in Eureka Springs with Lou Farish, was 20 years ago. We only had less than 50 people there in one room. And it was mostly the people from Washington discussing the old Blue Book cases. So that was way back. Those people have probably died since then. But now it has grown to where we have about 500 people. We take over the whole convention center. So I've watched it grow and evolve over these years. The UFO experience is never as bad as they think it is. The ideal situation would be that the person never remember anything, because they have been coming since the beginning of time, since the beginning of Earth. They have been here from the very beginning. As in my books, it talks about how they were responsible for the recreation of life on Earth. And they've been taking care of us all that time and checking on us. So they said the ideal situation would be that the person never remember anything and go on with their life. But the problem is the additives in our food, the pollutants in our atmosphere, if the person is on any kind of medication, if they're on any kind of drugs or alcohol, this changes the chemistry of the brain, and it colors the chemistry of the brain. So if they had an experience, they are remembering it in a distorted fashion, not in the way it happened. Sometimes they'll have dreams, or they'll have bits and pieces that they remember, but they remember it in a distorted fashion. And because fear is the strongest emotion a human has, they will naturally be afraid of it. If you don't understand something, you're going to be afraid of it. So they color it with fear and this emotional response. So naturally they think something bad has happened to them. But when I work with the person, I'm able to remove that conscious part and get to the real event, the real circumstance of what happened, and it's never what they think really happened. Once they find that out, they'll say, well, that wasn't so bad. I can live with that. So that's my job, is to make people understand these things. So the first thing I would say is don't think it is a negative experience. There's always an explanation for what's happening, and it's not near as bad as you think it is. Early in my work, when I was first doing the UFO phenomena and investigating the cases, when all of a sudden, during one case, see, as long as they're in that fear base, they're reliving it from the emotional state. And the person was on board the craft, and they were very frightened, and we were talking. And all of a sudden, I had this feeling of energy going through my body, a tingling in energy. And the voice changed that was coming from the person, and they said, she's the one we're supposed to tell. And I didn't know what they were doing, but they said we were checking it out. So they said, all right, what do you want to know? And you never ask me, what do you want to know? Because I have such a tremendous curiosity. So they said, you have been given permission. We will answer any question you want. And that began the work that was the custodians, and the convoluted universe has followed from that. But it not for one person. It happens time and time again through all the people I work with. All I have to do is say to them, is there anyone there on the craft that you can ask questions? And immediately someone will come forth and they'll say, all right, what do you want to know? We can talk to you. Because they said, why give the information to just anybody? Give it to someone who's going to use it. And that's why they've allowed me to ask the questions and get the information. So I've been able to find just about anything you could ever want to know, from their propulsion system to where they live, what it's like on their planets, to why they are coming and what they are doing here. And it's amazing. And the theories I found are not like any other investigator out there. Okay, that makes it exciting. What's my life like? People say that I need to be cloned. They don't understand how I can do so much. Because I do write books. I have the 15 books, and I've just finished a new one, and I've got enough material to write 3 more. I wanted to take a month or so off. But I write the books. I see clients regularly. When I'm on the road, I see them wherever I am. But as a rule, I have an office in Arkansas where people come from all over the world to have sessions. So I'm doing the sessions. I'm also teaching classes of my technique all over the world. I travel constantly to all the different countries of the world and do lectures and expos and conventions. And then I'm also running my publishing company too. So I do quite a bit. And the publishing company, we have 20 other authors, and we are putting more and more books out all the time. It's the Ozark Mountain Publishing. And our list is growing. Our office space, we had to expand it this year, and we just built another new warehouse. So I'm involved with the business, with the teaching of the classes, with the traveling and the lecturing, seeing clients, and writing books. And I also have a weekly radio show, so there's a lot I do, and that's only scratching the surface anyway. I keep busy. My website. The name of the company is Ozark Mountain Publishing, so the website is abbreviated. It's www.ozarkmt.com. Or for anybody overseas, it's ozarkmt.com. That's my website. We also have an 800 number if people want to call in with that. 1-800-935-0045. But if you check on my website, all the books are there. My schedule of speaking engagements is on the website. My list of classes are also on the website. And if anyone wants to have a private session, they call the office or go through the website to schedule appointments. So you can contact everything through the website. Okay.
I'm Rosemary Ellen Guiley. I'm a full-time paranormal researcher and investigator. I've written 31 books on just about everything you can think of in the paranormal. I've been a consulting editor of Fate magazine, associated with them since 1992. And recently I became associate editor for the Journal of Abduction Encounter Research, JAR, which is an online magazine. I'm very active in investigating haunted sites, mysterious places. I like to investigate the correlations between phenomena, how everything fits together. And I look at folklore, history, people's experiences, very interested in how we experience the paranormal. I became interested, like many people, because of my own experiences, and I had a lot of them in childhood. I think that many children have psychic and paranormal experiences. Sometimes they kind of fade into the background as children get older, but psychic ability runs in my family, so it was very much in the foreground for me. I was very interested in the experiences, especially of my mother, and in my own experiences in developing my psychic ability. So that propelled me deeper and deeper into the paranormal and in turn the spiritual and mystical. I have to sort of explain some of my early experiences in hindsight, because when you're a kid, you don't always know you take things at face value. And take, for example, Invisible Playmates. I think now that what I was seeing in the Invisible Playmates were fairies or elementals. I think that's a very common experience with children. I also had visitations from, at the time I called them angels, and I think that they were angels. They were, they felt heavenly to me, and they sang to me, especially at night when I went to sleep. I was not a sixth sense child, i.e. like the little boy in the movie I See Dead People. I didn't have very many of those experiences. It was mostly otherworldly. One thing I like about Fate is that, like the rest of my work, it goes into every aspect of the paranormal. All kinds of phenomena, spiritual and mystical, history, folklore. I love interviewing people. I like to go to events, network with researchers. I really like to hear about people's experiences and try and understand the circumstances that brought them to their experience, how and why they had the experience, and then what they do with that. How do they integrate it? Fate looks at all of those things. I have a real exciting project that I'm working on. It started out as an article and now it's a book. It's on shadow people. And this is one of those phenomena that cuts right across the board. Shadow people are dark figures that mostly visit people at night. You wake up in the middle of the night and see a dark silhouette standing beside the bed. It's usually wearing a hat. It seems to be male, and you know that it's solid and that it's watching you, even though you can't see facial features. Well, I started out researching this phenomenon because it seemed to be related to hauntings, to poltergeist phenomena, to nightmares, the nightmare hag. And I found over the course of time that there was a very strong ET connection. Not that shadow people accompany ET experiences, but many people who have had close encounters, contact, and abductions are also experiencers of shadow people. So I'm exploring that connection more deeply now. I've got a very large database, over 400 personal original accounts of shadow people experiences that I've collected over the years. There is what I call a core experience, and that is the shadow person who is tall, 6 to 7 feet tall, male, seems to be wearing a cloak or a trench coat and a hat. The hat is anywhere from a big floppy brimmed hat to stovepipe hats. Most often I get descriptions like detective fedoras. And in fact, when you look at drawings of men in black, that's the shadow person, only a solid black figure without any details of clothing and facial appearances. They're very threatening. They don't attack people, but they emanate this aura of menace and like they're up to no good. People wake up in the middle of the night and they're absolutely terrified to see them. Sometimes they try and grab at the figures, but their hands go through them, even though the figures will obstruct light and seem to move about with mass. They move through walls. They frighten animals. Some people are frequent experiencers, just like abductees, and some people have occasional experiences. People have been having them for hundreds and hundreds of years. They go way back in folklore and in Indian legend. I think it's mostly a separate phenomenon from the haunting figure. In fact, I distinguish between shadow figures, which would be haunting entities, and shadow people. I think shadow people are non-human entities that shapeshift into a form that becomes this silhouette figure. On the other hand, there are dark, shadowy figures that look like human beings that haunt places, and I think they may be either low energy apparitions, or they may be what we call residual energy, kind of an imprint that's left over from a haunting. There are some haunted places that have lots of shadow people. For example, Waverly Hills Sanatorium in Louisville, Kentucky, which is a ruined tuberculosis sanatorium. It's famous for its shadow people. I think that the figures that I've seen there, and I've seen many shadow people at Waverly, I think they're really more shadow people than shadow figures. And in fact, if you consider that they may be related to ETs, it's possible that shadow people have some haunted places as bases of operation. Well, fate follows trends, of course, and the two topics that are perennial favorites, but are also subject to the trends as well, are ghosts and UFOs. We're certainly seeing an increase in interest in UFOs, in contact. There's been a huge number of increases in cases, as many people out there in the audience know, a tremendous jump in reported sightings. So we're seeing more of a demand for articles on UFOs and ETs now. Ghosts have been very, very popular for several years. It's not that ghosts are ever going to go away in popularity, but there's always something at the top and then a few below that. I would say yes. I would say more men are interested in UFOs than women. In the ghost world, I've seen the audiences pretty split down the middle. It's just that more of the men come forward in the investigations because of the equipment. They're more technical oriented than women. Women are more experiential oriented. But when I've gone out and spoken at ghost oriented conferences and haunted weekend events, the audience is pretty well split down the middle. Fate is probably the oldest continuous publication in the paranormal, having been founded in 1948. It has a reputation for reliability. People know that they get good information from Fate magazine. It's got diversity. We don't focus on any one area, even though we might give more attention to certain topics to meet our reader interest, but we cut across the board. We also like to be provocative, to give people cutting-edge material or interesting ideas to think about, to stretch people's imaginations and consideration about what reality is. Yes, I am still collecting anecdotes about shadow people. I'm especially interested to hear people's descriptions of their experiences. My website is visionaryliving.com, www.visionaryliving.com, and you can hit the contact button and send me an email. I have some information on shadow people on the website.
My name is Edward T. Martin. I'm a researcher about Jesus in India, about the missing time in the life of Jesus between the ages of 12 and 30. And also I'm an author of a book called King of Travelers, Jesus' Lost Years in India. And I've written a new book, which is a follow-up book about the research I did in India in the summer of 2005. And at that time, in the summer of 2005, Paul Davids, who is a movie producer and a professional filmmaker, Paul Davids joined me on that journey to India in the summer of 2005. We had an Indian filmmaking team with us. We traveled more than 4,000 miles for 6 weeks during the summer of 2005. Well, as a child growing up in a small town in Texas, I was very interested about the subject of India in general, and there was no obvious reason why I was so interested about India as a youngster. But what happened when I was 18 years old, I met a young man from Hopkinsville, Kentucky, who told me about Edgar Cayce, and he told me about the research which Edgar Cayce did concerning, well, Edgar Cayce found that he could go into a trance state, and Edgar Cayce in the trance state could access a huge amount of information, medical information to give medical readings to help sick people, and also Cayce later found that he could go into the trance state and access past life information to help people about their current problems, which may have a basis in past lifetime. In those past lifetime readings, Casey, on at least 8 occasions, Casey mentioned that young Jesus had traveled to India and had studied in India for many years. And reading about that information in the books about Edgar Casey was the first place that I got interested about Jesus in India. On that first trip to India, I interviewed Jesus in India researchers, and I went to a number of holy sites and sacred places. I also found out about the tomb of Mary, the mother of Jesus, in northern Pakistan at a place called Murree. We think that he spent at least about 7 years, perhaps 8 or 9 years. We know that young Jesus reached India at about the age of 14, and if he left the area of Palestine at about the age of 13 years old, we know that the camel caravans in about 1 year could reach India. And our new movie, by the way, coming out is called simply Jesus in India, and we hope people will keep an eye out for that. If you go to Tomb of Jesus, that's TOMBOFJESUS.com, and you go to the menu bar at the top and you click on Researchers, you can scroll down, see my name, Edward T. Martin, and click on information there, including you can click on Atlantis Rising magazine and get a 2,500 word article. That is, you can see it on your screen, and that article by Lynn Caston tells all about our 2005 filming project in India, and it also has 6 color photos there from our India trip. I think Jesus was influenced by his years of studies of Hinduism and Buddhism. I think Jesus was influenced to be more tolerant and more patient toward all other religions and systems of spiritual belief. And I think that's the most important lesson that I'm trying to get across with this information, with the information about Jesus in India. I'm trying to get across the concept that all of us, all Christians and all other people, should be very tolerant and very understanding of other religions, other belief systems, and I think that we should not condemn or judge other religions or other belief systems. I think all of us need to tolerate each other and get along peacefully. Yes, I do. I think the evidence is very strong. There are 2,000-year-old written documents, which we tell about in our movie and I tell about in my book, my first and my second book. There are places which have physical evidence, such as tombs. There's the tomb of Mary in northern Pakistan at Murree. There is the tomb of Jesus at Srinagar in Kashmir in northwestern India. And the evidence concerning that is the possibility, which some people believe, that Jesus may have survived the crucifixion in a state of near death, that he may have had help in the tomb of Joseph of Arimathea, which may have had a back tunnel entrance, and that healers from India may have entered the back tunnel entrance and ministered to Jesus as he was so hurt, as he was half dead after the crucifixion, and that Jesus may have recovered, and then they all left the tomb of Joseph of Arimathea early in the morning on the 3rd day, and that Jesus later made his appearances to the apostles, and that Jesus later recovered for 2 years further in Damascus at a safe house in Damascus. But the evidence in India and elsewhere is very strong. The evidence is that Jesus did spend time in India. For example, in our movie we interview the Shankaracharya of Puri, where the Jagannath temple is. The Shankaracharya of Puri, who is like the Pope of Hinduism, he affirmed to us that the temple records, the ancient temple records of Jagannath, list young Jesus as a student at the Jagannath temple. And so we know that there's physical evidence there that young Jesus was a student at the Jagannath temple for about 6 years, studying Hinduism. And we also know that Jesus visited other places such as Benares on the Ganges River, where there was an ancient Hindu healing arts school, where among other things they used obsidian blades to perform surgery on the eyes, such as removing eye cataracts with obsidian blades and with an ointment which deadened the pain in the eyes. We know that young Jesus, for example, later visited Kashmir, and there's evidence that if Jesus did survive the crucifixion and return to India, as some of the accounts indicate, there's evidence that Jesus became a spiritual advisor to the king of Kashmir, King Shalivahan. And we tell all about that in our movie. The physical document that is the evidence of that is called the Bhavishya Mahapurana. And that tells how that Jesus was chosen as a spiritual advisor by King Shalivahan of Kashmir. And he lived to a ripe old age. That Jesus married a pretty young woman named Marianne, who used to be his housekeeper. They had several children, and that Jesus lived to the ripe old age of about 110 and is buried there in Srinagar in Kashmir. And I've been to his tomb. So it's fascinating information. And also the tradition is that Jesus undertook many journeys and did his spiritual teachings in many places in the years after the crucifixion. And the information becomes more and more amazing that Jesus may have even visited the Americans. He may have come here to North America and South America and done teaching and healing among the Native Americans. There's a wonderful book called He Walked the Americas by L. Taylor Hanson. Wonderful book. And giving the traditions and legends and folklore from dozens of American Indian and South American Indian tribes about Jesus here in the Americas. Jesus also may have visited England and other places in Europe. Jesus may have visited places like Mongolia and also Japan. And there are accounts of Jesus having visited South Africa and East Africa, and also accounts of Jesus having visited the Pacific Islands. So this is all pretty amazing material, but it's as though the more you research, the more amazing evidence you find that Jesus really is King of Travelers.